When the delegations arrived in Islamabad, they presented an orderly narrative, direct talks, a path toward nuclear agreements, official communiques about peace and mutual respect. But here's what I've learned from studying game theory and historical pattern. Official statements are almost never where the real game is being played. The actual negotiation happens in the incentive structures, in what each player stands to gain or lose. While everyone focused on the press releases, Pakistan was recalculating its position in a changing world. The Gulf states were making strategic moves that had nothing to do with the announced agenda. And China, which many people ignore, was playing a fundamentally different game altogether, one that operates on a completely different timeline. This is the paradox of modern diplomacy. The more official it appears, the less real it is. What I want to do today is look at the incentive structures, the historical patterns, the game theory of who wins and who loses in Islamabad. Because if you understand what's actually happening behind the scenes, you'll see how the entire balance of power in Asia is about to shift. Here's what most geopolitical analysts are missing right now. The Islamabad talks are not really about Iran and America reaching a nuclear agreement. That's the surface story. The deeper game is about repositioning, about which regional power emerges as the dominant force in Asia over the next decade. Let me be direct. I believe the United States is walking into a strategic trap that it cannot escape from. Not because Iran is militarily superior, Iran isn't, but because the incentive structures of all the major players point toward one outcome: American overextension, economic strain, and eventual withdrawal from the region. This is not ideology. This is game theory. Here's the core prediction. Within the next 18 to 24 months, we will see a fundamental realignment in the Middle East. The Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar will begin hedging their bets away from American protection and toward Chinese economic partnerships. Pakistan will quietly position itself as the mediator between Iran and the Gulf, gaining leverage with all sides. And China will consolidate control over critical trade routes and resource flows that America can no longer defend. The Islamabad talks are the opening move in this larger game. They appear to be about nuclear diplomacy. In reality, they're about signaling. Each player is communicating to the others. Here's what I want. Here's what I'll accept. Here's what I'll do if you don't cooperate. And the most important signal? That American power in Asia is no longer assumed. It's being tested. For the first time in 30 years, regional powers are openly negotiating futures that don't center on Washington. This changes everything, not in dramatic ways that make headlines, but in structural ways that reshape who controls what for the next generation. To understand why Islamabad matters, we need to understand the architecture that's been in place since the Cold War ended. For 3 decades, American power in Asia rested on a simple structure: military bases, naval dominance, and economic leverage through the dollar system. The Gulf states accepted American protection. Pakistan balanced between America and China, but ultimately remained within the American sphere. And Iran was isolated, sanctioned, contained. But structures don't last forever. They decay. They become fragile. And when enough players recognize that a structure is failing, they begin to move. Let's look at Pakistan first. Pakistan has always been caught between two worlds. It borders Iran. It has deep historical and religious ties to the Gulf states. And it sits on China's Belt and Road Initiative and critical infrastructure connecting China to the Middle East and beyond.
For decades, Pakistan had to choose, align with America or align with China. But something has shifted. Pakistan no longer feels it has to choose. It can play both sides because neither America nor China can afford to lose Pakistan's cooperation. Now consider the Gulf states. Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, these are not ideological players. They are rational economic actors. For 50 years, they made a deal with America. We provide oil and regional stability. You provide military protection and legitimacy. But that deal is breaking down. Why? Because America is no longer the dominant energy supplier. America is no longer the only superpower. And most importantly, China is now offering something America cannot: unlimited economic partnership without the military costs. And then there's Iran. Iran has been isolated for 40 years. But isolation creates interesting incentives. When you have nothing to lose, you become willing to take risks that other players won't. Iran has developed asymmetric military capabilities. It has proxy networks. It has ideological cohesion that the Gulf states lack. And most critically, Iran controls the Strait of Hormuz and the choke point through which 20% of global oil flows.
This is the context. We have regional powers with shifting incentives meeting in Islamabad. We have American power that's stretched thin militarily in Ukraine, economically burdened by debt, and politically fractured at home. And we have China waiting patiently, understanding that empires don't fall overnight. They erode. They lose their ability to enforce the rules they created. The Islamabad talks happen in this context. They are not the cause of change. They are a signal that change has already begun. Let me break down what's actually happening in Islamabad by looking at the three critical dynamics that most analysts completely miss. First, the Pakistan pivot. Pakistan is no longer a follower in this game, Ben, and it's becoming a broker. For decades, Pakistan feared being caught between America and China. But that fear is disappearing. Why? Because Pakistan now understands something crucial. It has leverage over both. China needs Pakistan for Belt and Road. America needs Pakistan for Afghanistan, for regional stability, for counterterrorism. So Pakistan's strategy has shifted. Instead of choosing, Pakistan is now playing the honest broker, hosting talks, facilitating negotiations, positioning itself as the indispensable middleman. This gives Pakistan influence that it's never had before. Every negotiation must account for Pakistani interests. This is a massive shift in regional hierarchy. The Gulf state fragmentation. Here's what people don't understand about the Gulf states. They appear unified, but they're not. Saudi Arabia has different interests than UAE.
And all of them are watching China's economic power grow, while American military commitments become increasingly expensive and unreliable. The Gulf states are beginning to hedge. They're signing trade deals with Iran. They're investing in Chinese infrastructure. They're reducing their dependence on American military guarantees. This is rational behavior from rational actors. When your security guarantor becomes weaker, you find new sources of security. The Islamabad talks accelerate this because they signal to the Gulf, negotiation is now possible. You don't need American military protection to talk to Iran. You can negotiate directly. Third, the American overcommitment problem. This is where game theory becomes crystal clear. America is trying to maintain dominance across too many theaters simultaneously. It's involved in Ukraine, it's committed to Taiwan, it's maintaining bases across the Pacific, it's supporting Israel, and now it may be drawn into direct conflict with Iran. Each of these commitments individually might be manageable, but together they create a strategic problem. America cannot afford to lose any of them. This gives every regional player leverage. If Iran knows America cannot afford another major conflict, Iran gains negotiating power. If China knows America is overextended, China gains space to move. This is the trap. And the Islamabad talks are where players are beginning to recognize it exists. The deeper insight is this. Empires don't fall because enemies defeat them. Empires fall because they overcommit, exhaust their resources, and lose the ability to enforce the rules they created. Rome didn't lose its military superiority to the barbarians. Rome lost because it tried to defend too many borders simultaneously while its economy contracted and its internal cohesion fractured. That's not a conspiracy. That's not ideology. That's structural history repeating itself.
And Islamabad is where the regional powers are beginning to act on that recognition.
Now we arrive at the question everyone wants answered. What actually happens next? The honest answer is that there are multiple paths forward, and which one emerges depends on decisions that haven't been made yet. Let me walk you through the three most probable scenarios. Scenario 1, the controlled fragmentation. This is the optimistic path. Regional powers recognize American power is declining, but choose not to accelerate the collapse. Pakistan becomes the central hub for Middle Eastern diplomacy. The Gulf states gradually shift their economic partnerships toward China while maintaining minimal American military presence. Iran gains regional influence, but stops short of direct confrontation with America. This scenario unfolds over 10 to 15 years. American influence shrinks gradually. China fills the vacuum peacefully. No major wars, just a slow, managed transition of power. The Islamabad talks in this scenario become the template for future negotiations. Multilateral, region-centered, without American dominance. Scenario 2, the escalation trap. Here's where it gets dangerous. America, recognizing its power is eroding, makes a desperate move to reassert dominance. It provokes a confrontation with Iran. The thinking is simple: win a quick military victory, reassert American credibility, remind the region who's in charge. But Iran, understanding it has nothing to lose and everything to gain from a prolonged conflict, fights a war of attrition. Supply lines break down, American casualties mount. The Gulf states, seeing American weakness, accelerate their pivot to China. Pakistan, caught in the middle, begins openly cooperating with China. What was supposed to be a quick demonstration of American power becomes a grinding, expensive, unwinnable conflict. This scenario ends with American withdrawal, but only after massive economic and human costs. Here's what I believe is most likely. We're headed towards scenario 2, transitioning into scenario 1. America will attempt confrontation with Iran. It will fail to achieve decisive victory. It will eventually withdraw. And in that withdrawal, the regional architecture will permanently shift. The Islamabad talks are just the beginning of this process. They're the moment when regional players began openly acknowledging what they'd privately understood. The American era in Asia is ending. Let me give you the insight that ties everything together, and then I want to leave you with a warning. The insight is this: we are watching the end of a particular kind of world order in real time. Not the end of America as a nation, or America will remain powerful, but the end of American unipolarity in Asia. For the past 30 years, the rules of the game in the Middle East, South Asia, and East Asia have been written by Washington. Those rules are being rewritten right now. And the Islamabad talks are where you can see it happening. What makes this significant is not that it's dramatic or violent or immediate. Most people miss historical turning point because they expect drama. They expect explosions, declarations, clear moments of rupture. But that's not how power transitions actually work. They happen quietly, through accumulating decisions, by rational actors responding to changing incentives. Pakistan decides to broker talks. The Gulf states decide to hedge toward China. Iran decides it can negotiate from strength rather than weakness. These are small decisions individually, but together they constitute a fundamental shift in how the region will be organized for the next generation. Now, the warning. This transition does not have to be peaceful. If America doubles down on maintaining dominance through military force, if regional players feel cornered and respond aggressively, if China moves too quickly and triggers a backlash, then this transition becomes violent and chaotic. The difference between scenario 1 and scenario 2 might come down to decisions made in the next 12 months. So here's what I want you to understand. The official story coming out of Islamabad is theater. It's not wrong, exactly, but it's incomplete. The real story is about incentive structures, about which players have leverage, about whose interests are being served by the new arrangements, and being quietly negotiated in side rooms and back channels. Watch what happens in the months ahead. Not the official statements. Watch the trade deals. Watch the military movements. Watch where China invests. Watch where the Gulf states diversify their partnerships. Those are the real negotiations. Those will tell you who's winning and who's losing in the game that's actually being played. Because in geopolitics, the gap between what's said and what's done is usually where the truth lives.